For me, these are things that I've painted. I didn't go to art school. Um, I don't try to sell them. There's a couple of spots in my house now that the wall is empty. But usually these are just leaning all over the place. They're a release for me. They're a healthy release. They're a release of anger, tension, anxiety, sadness. And I didn't go to art school, but I didn't let that scare me. I didn't let that stop me from just finding an outlet. Listening to music and playing music and writing songs has been very beneficial for me in my grief. I didn't go to school for music either, believe it or not. But it's something that allows me to feel emotions and allow them to flow through me. I'm going to share a couple of songs with y'all later tonight. But the biggest way that I've dealt with my own grief is by telling my story, using these most painful seasons of my life to connect with other people, using them as tools. So I'm going to read to you an essay. And keep in mind here that I may be a decent storyteller, but I am not a professional writer either. It's not something that I went to school for. It's just something that I did to help me get through my own grief. It started out as a selfish release, something that was personal, something I didn't think I would be sharing, much less over and over. But the story became too big to tell the more I wrote it down. So it was really humbling when I got asked to submit my work to a book, an important book. It's a book of essays by 60 women, and they're all telling their stories of hitting rock bottom and rising back to the top to tell the tale. This book is What Doesn't Kill Her, Stories of Women's Resilience. It was released last June. The women who edited and published this book knew the importance of creating safe places for people to share their stories. And while these stories may be difficult to read, they are an honest reflection of life. They're a reminder that we all have a story, and they offer a starting point to help us begin to heal. So I'd like to read my essay to y'all tonight. It's called Our Secrets Keep Us Sick. Why do we wait to tell our stories? As I've watched and listened to women in the media coming forward about sexual misconduct, the most common questions I've heard asked are, why now? And why did she wait so long? Most women that we see just coming forward aren't new to telling their story. More often than not, we've told our stories already. We told them to someone who was supposed to be trustworthy and safe. When you're shut down by people you assume will stand up for you, why would you want to tell anyone else? So we lock it up. We convince ourselves that it won't come up again, that it didn't really matter, or that it never really happened. We forget how to be girls, how to be young ladies, and then we don't know how to be women. We forget how to feel human. Then life gets hard, and sometimes, unexpectedly, we hit rock bottom. Our secrets keep us sick. I can see that sentence in her handwriting when I close my eyes. She wrote it just 2 weeks before she took her own life. In that same journal, a loose piece of paper tucked in the pages reads, "What had happened was, I can't ward off the memories anymore. My mind won't sleep. Dreams won't quit telling me what's next." Like my mama, I was raised by a tribe of strong Southern women, and I grew up thinking that this was what my family was made of, what it was built on. As a child, it seemed to mean something, like bravery, courage, open hearts, open houses. Yet as an adult, I would find out that earning the title of a strong Southern woman meant learning how to suppress your feelings and learning how to keep quiet about things that might bring shame and ruin the reputation of the family. We weren't a brood of tough freedom fighters at all. Instead, we were generations of women doing our damnedest to keep up appearances. Around 1 a.m. on November 1st, 2010, the world lost a strong Southern woman when my mama shot herself in the heart while sitting in her favorite spot on her back porch. In the days and months that followed, a story began to unfold. A story of a woman who had a lot of secrets. A story of a woman who had never had a chance to tell her story. a woman who had hit rock bottom without realizing that she could get back up. When a man takes advantage of his position as the head of a household, it is devastating to the entire family. A husband, a father, a patriarch is supposed to give love and support to his household. Fathers of young girls should nurture the fragile nature of being female and provide an example of what she should someday seek in a man. How can a young woman feel strong or empowered if she's raised to feel used and complacent? When I was in 5th grade, I confided in my mama that a grown man had stuck his tongue in my mouth. Her response was, "Well, he does that to his kids." Telling this story to my sister later in life, I learned that the same man had been inappropriate with her, and that she had also told our mother. Our mother's response to my sister, "One day you will meet a man who loves you, and that will be okay." We had both been given very unhealthy responses by someone we loved and trusted. Now, for those who have never met my mama, she was loving, caring, funny. She was an amazing wife, an amazing mother. Everyone who met her loved her, and she loved them right back. But remember, she had known that our secrets keep us sick, and in some instances, those secrets keep us from being able to react properly to things going on around us. In my case, and in my sister's case, we had told someone. We told the person that thought would tell us what had happened. We told the person that we thought would tell us why it happened. We told the person that we thought would tell us that it wasn't our fault. However, in that moment, in that small downstairs half bathroom of that townhouse, during the early hours of our big football party, I tattled on a grown man who was supposed to be a friend of the family, and I didn't get the response that I should have gotten from my mama. If, in that moment, my mama would have admitted that what had happened to me was wrong, she would have also, in that moment, had to deal with the fact that it had happened to her too. When my mama passed away, a lot of things were unearthed, and I felt like I was a part of an archaeological dig that was exposing the shittiness of humanity. It opened my eyes to picture-perfect families and the realities of the harm of keeping up appearances causes. My mama was a writer. She journaled every day. She took notes. She documented everything. Most families who lose someone to suicide are left with so many unanswered questions. Reading Mama's notebooks and journals opened my eyes to the wild injustices within our family and to a woman who was living in silent terror. She would leave small cries for help in the margins. She wrote the words, "quiet strength, inner turmoil," in such beautiful handwriting that you think that it would have contained a lovely message of hope. Most of her journals were about herself, her daily struggles, about Dad and his work, and about how much she loved her kids and a lot of little sweet memories. After she died, Dad realized that he couldn't stay in the house without her. So I drove down from North Carolina to Georgia to help him go through things and pack up. As he took apart the dresser in her bedroom, he found another journal, one we hadn't seen. The words inside its covers felt like a hot bullet going straight through my heart. My eyes were open to a woman who had been molested since the age of 4, a woman who was in a sexual relationship with her stepfather even into adulthood. The part that hurt the most was reading the words, "How could they forgive me? How could I ever look him in the eyes again? How will my children trust me?" She was struggling to keep the secret, but struggling even more trying to figure out how to let it out after she had kept it for so long. The day after the notebook was found, my sister and I sat down with our family to tell them of all the horrible things that we had learned. Surely we strong Southern women can work through this together, but that wasn't the response we got. Instead, we found out that other people already knew. We were told, well, in another time and place, they would have made a good couple. Turns out that the strong Southern women had been working hard to keep this one under wraps for a long time. And this started a fight as I attempted to rip off blinders. Currently, there are people in my hometown, both friends and family, wondering why I waited so long to share this story. Well, the truth is, I didn't. I just tried to share it with the wrong people. I shared it with people that I thought would tell me why it happened. I shared it with people that would tell me what had happened. I shared it with people that I thought would tell me that it wasn't her fault. I expected healthy, helpful reactions. What I didn't expect was the fear, the blame, or being told to keep quiet. Now I share this story with the people who are closest to me. I share it with the people who need to hear it. I share it with those struggling with similar circumstances. I share it with people who won't make me feel like the guilty party. And I share it with people who encourage me to keep going. Why do so many people in my family not know the truth? It's not because I didn't want to tell them. I just didn't know where to start. You see, those strong Southern women wanted to deal with it their own way. Why weren't other people in my family telling this story or trying to? Why did I slow down in my own telling of it? Why didn't I just put it all out there? I guess I felt like I tried. But I shut down due to the reactions of the ones I had told. I was confronting them about something that most of them didn't know. Some of them had suspected, and something that a handful of them already knew. And that may have hurt the most. Finding out that someone that my mama loved knew what was happening and never did anything to help her. They say separating yourself from toxic, negative relationships is good for your mental well-being. That's a lot easier said than done when those relationships are with kin. I guess I assumed that once the secrets were out, the rest would be easy. I guess I didn't realize how hard my family was working to keep the door closed on that closet. You know, the ones with the skeletons. But the rug that everything's been swept under isn't touching the floor anymore. In order to write about my grief, I had to be fully present in it. At times that was really easy, at times it was not easy at all. But then when I would sit down to actually create a story that made sense to everybody, I had to also detach from it. I had to be aware of it. I had to react to the way it made me feel. I had to make myself vulnerable. So I put it all out there. And it was scary. I did lose a lot of close relationships with my friends and family that didn't want me to tell that story. That didn't want to admit that what I was writing was real. People who knew secrets did keep us sick, and they chose to hide it all away anyway. Now I know that it's what I gained that made it all worth it. I finally knew I wasn't alone. A heavy sadness disappeared, and because of the support that I did have, carrying the weight of my day-to-day junk seemed easier. I made connections with strangers who had similar experiences. I made new friendships with people who wanted me to be me, even when that was messy. And it helped me to realize not only the importance of being myself, but the importance of creating safe places for others to be themselves. This story also served a second purpose for me. It gave voice to a woman that I had lost. A woman who had a lot to say, a lot to let out, but couldn't find a way. Her words were never spoken out loud and her journals piled up. If she would have had the courage to tell her story, the courage to stop what was going on, the courage to talk about what she was going through, then her life as an adult could have been different. If there would have been open conversations about what had happened to her, then my sister and I could have had healthier responses to what had happened to us. So why do we keep others from being open and honest? Is it because that we're afraid we'll have to do the same thing? Recently, I had a friend tell me that she had been shamed for oversharing. People in her family were aware of her traumas, but they would not allow her the space to get things out because they didn't want to have to deal with the trauma themselves. This is really common. We put ourselves out there, and of course we want to feel supported and accepted and loved. Unfortunately, there are times when we put ourselves out there and we find out that the love that we thought was unconditional from family and friends has so many conditions. This is why we as individuals, as a church, as a community, need to be that safe space. We need to be those open doors. We need to be the open ears and minds and hearts. When we close the doors on people, we force them to hide, to put the mask back on. Where do people go when acceptance isn't there? Bad relationships, addictions, suicide. Our secrets really do keep us sick. I fully believe that. When we hide things or feel like we can't fully be who we are, then we struggle internally and our self-doubt grows. Playing shows as a songwriter, a lot of times I would look out into the audience and I would tell them, if you are sitting at a table with people that you call family and friends, and you have a truth inside of yourself that you can't tell them, then that's not your family and those aren't your friends. Change tables. We all have a story. And telling your story doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to stand up on a stage and speak words of truth out loud. Your story can be told in the way you live, in the way that you treat others. When we find the bravery to tell our own story, when we do talk, we find out that we aren't alone, that we aren't the only ones wrestling. We find the places where our stories overlap and intertwine. But finding our voice can be scary. I know it was for me. And many of you have heard me say that worship song that I lead us in on Sunday mornings sometimes, No Longer Slaves, is a favorite of mine. It is. Because the story I'm sharing today isn't easy to share, and a lot of times our stories aren't. But I don't want to be a slave to fear if it means not making connections. I don't want to be a slave to fear or shame or guilt, or a slave to my own mind, my own heart, the opinions of others. Does that make any of this easy? No. But it makes it worth it. So this is just the beginning. There's a lot of work always to be done. Our mental well-being is important. Writing this was a huge start for me. This essay is part of a much larger story that I promise to you and to myself to keep telling, to talk more, to tell more, to help others to see how relieving it can be to talk, to be honest with myself and the ones around me so that I can have stronger and more meaningful relationships. I want to continue to use my grief to learn, to grow, and most importantly, to help others do the same. This has been a major part of my own healing, telling this story, painting, no matter how messy and unprofessional, singing, writing music. These things have all been a part of my grieving process. There's so many things that can be a part of your grieving process and help you move through it. It could be as simple as playing in the dirt outside. So I'm going to share a few songs with you tonight, if you don't mind. This first song is a song that I played last Sunday. I opened with it. It's called Each Passing Day. Shortly after my mom committed suicide, I was telling everyone I was okay for a really long time. And on the outside, I kind of was. I was being strong for the family. I was helping my sister make arrangements. I helped Dad with the thank you notes. I even played the music at my mom's funeral. I'm still not really sure how that happened, but I heard it did. So I think that this song for me when I wrote it was my way of finally saying out loud that I wasn't okay. And that was okay. But I needed my friends to hear it, and this was the easiest way for me to say it out loud. I was thinking of her and it caused me to miss out on life around me. I was thinking of her, let the world slip by. Each passing day is harder than the last. was lost inside myself. The world just spun on by. I was lost in a piece of my heart that I felt die. Each passing day is harder than the last. Each time I think that I know, your memory haunts me more. Each passing day is harder than the last. And I've been thinking I need to stop thinking so hard. So if my mom was here, this would be the song that she would ask me to play. So I'm going to play this. This is a song that I wrote for her because she was having a hard time. I hadn't been a songwriter very long, so it was simple, but to see the difference that it made, it was good for her. It was good for me. Only God is there for me when you're not. And in life you help me give it my best shot. And I know that I don't say it a lot, but I'm here for you too. Thankful for all you do. You've always been tough when hard times pass through. And I know that life's gotten rough on you. Smile on, sweet mama mine, and always let that kind soul shine for all the good you've done in life. We'll rise above your times of strife. Just take life at a slow pace. And when you see the smile on my face, know it came from you. I'm thankful for all you do. Only God is there for me when you're not. Without you, I wouldn't have had a shot. And I know that I don't say it aloud, So, on the topic of suicide, I really do feel like it's more important that we openly talk about it and the disease called depression. We must take away the taboo. We can change attitudes and behaviors surrounding suicide with knowledge. We can do this by allowing space for people to share their stories, like we have here tonight. Thanks, Jeff and Jody. By allowing people to be themselves, opening doors, having open conversations, even with people we don't know or people we don't understand. The act of listening alone can be life-saving. We need to stop being afraid of having difficult conversations. We need to stop being afraid of what others think. We need to stop being ashamed because society says we should be. We are amazing. Every single one of us. For my last song, and this is not one that I wrote, I'm going to do No Longer Slaves. If you'd like to stand and sing along, please do. This has become one of my favorite songs that we do here because it really does mean a lot to me. You unravel me with a melody. You surround me with a song of deliverance from my enemies, till all my fears are gone. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. From my mother's womb, you have chosen me. Love has called my name. I've been born again into your family. Your blood flows through my veins. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. You split the sea so I could walk right through it. My fears are drowned in perfect love. You rescued me and I will stand and sing. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I am a child of God. I really appreciate y'all being here tonight to support me and telling my story, but also just to be a part of this church and the safe place that we're creating here for other people to be themselves, to tell their stories. I hope that you all find the strength to tell your own story.
Help me thank Liz for sharing. Liz, you said something there in that about creating space. You can be seated. Sorry. About creating space, and I wanted to address that real quick. And I wanted to tell 3 quick stories in hopes to tell one confession of us as a church. And then I want to move into a time where you can have a chance to get alone, maybe with a friend, by yourself, and do some personal reflection. But I want to tell a story, or 3 stories, about a woman named Mary. And in the New Testament, Jesus was surrounded by several women named Mary. There's like 6 or 7 referenced in the New Testament, and it's hard to keep up with them. One of them is just called the Other Mary, and so it makes it even easier, or makes it even harder to figure out which one's which. But I want to focus real quick, and I'm only going to take a couple minutes here to tell 3 stories about Mary, the sister of Lazarus, and Martha. And these are familiar stories. If you have any church or scripture experience, these might be very familiar to you. But I want to tell them real quick. The first story is found in Luke 10, and this is the story about Mary and Martha at home, and Jesus comes to visit. And they're there, and we find in the story Mary has fallen at the feet of Jesus, and she's there, and she's listening to him teach, and she's learning from him. And the story goes on to say that Martha was very angered by this. There was a lot to be done. There was cleaning and cooking and things to get done, and she became annoyed, and she became loud, and she complained like, "Oh, you're just sitting there all googly-eyed at Jesus, listening to him at his feet, and when there could be so many more things to be done." And Jesus looks at Martha, and he says to her, he says, she's doing exactly what she needs to be doing right now. And in this moment, you see the space created at Jesus' feet to learn, and the importance of that. And Jesus wanted to make sure that Martha knew, and those that were there knew, that this was an important piece for followers of Jesus, was to learn and to be taught. And we fast forward to John's gospel, and this is in chapter 12. There's a story, and it's each one of the gospels tells a different angle of the story. But this is, again, Mary and Martha together. They're having dinner at a man named Simon's house. And Lazarus is there at the dinner table with them. And what's significant about that is in the chapter prior to that, Lazarus was dead. But now he's there at this dinner table with them all. And Mary comes in, and she takes this jar of oil and perfume, and she anoints Jesus' feet with it, and she anoints his head with it. And this is just a few days prior to Jesus being crucified. And she comes and she anoints him, and Judas, one of the disciples, is there in the room, and he's annoyed by this. And he's like, "Look at this waste of money. That's enough, maybe 10, 100 days worth of wages, and she just is wasting this perfume and pouring this out." And Jesus hears this, or picks up on Judas' heart, which is ironic that it's Judas, the one complaining. Judas is known to be the treasurer for the disciples, and he was known to take advantage of the money anytime he needed it. And he complains, and he kind of attacks Mary in this moment and says, "Look at this waste." And Jesus says to Judas, he rebukes him and says, "No, listen, this is what she's doing. She's preparing my body for what's to come." In fact, he says to her, and I don't know anywhere else in Scripture that Jesus says this, but he says, when my story is told, this story needs to be included. And that's found in all the Gospels there, that Jesus says, I want this to be included in my story, of what she's doing here. This is how important it is. She's this moment of Mary falling at the feet of Jesus to worship, to anoint, to pour out her perfume, to give what she has in worship in this moment. And the third story is found just a chapter prior to this. It's in John chapter 11. And this is the story of Lazarus. He's sick, and he's close to death. And Mary and Martha say to their servant, "Go find Jesus and tell him to come back. Tell him that his friend, that our brother Lazarus, is dead, because I know who Jesus is. I know what he's about, and he'll come back and he'll make Lazarus better. He'll heal him from the sickness." And they send their servant out to find Jesus, and he does, and he travels there, and Jesus, Mary and Martha have sent for you their brother Lazarus, the one you love, your friend is close to death. Will you come back and heal him? And the story goes is that Jesus hears it, and he sits down. And he says to the servant, "No, I won't come." And the servant, walks away, leaves, and heads back to Mary and Martha's house. And he gets there, and they're like, "Where's Jesus? Is he with you? Is he coming?" And you can just imagine the servant looking at them and kind of maybe kicking the ground and not making eye contact with them, and says, "No, he's not coming." And Mary and Martha are like, what do you mean he's not coming? Like, what did he say? Did you tell him that Lazarus was close to death? And he's like, yeah, I told him. I told him multiple ways. I told him that he needed to come. And what did he say? What did he say anything? Did he send word? And he's like, no, he didn't. He didn't say anything. He just said he wasn't going to come. And then we know the story goes on, and Lazarus dies, and word gets out, and Jesus is there with his disciples, and he says to him, hey, let's go now. Let's go visit Mary and Martha. And the disciples are kind of like, well, if you weren't going to go and see him before and heal him, why go now? Like, why? It's, days have passed. He's dead. Why would you go see him now? And he's like, and he says to his disciples, you're for your sake. And it's a lot to unpack there, but he says, you're lucky. For your sake, we didn't go there and heal him because of what's about to happen. And it was foreshadowing what was going to happen in Jesus' story, where he would also come back from the dead. And so they leave, and they head back to this village where Mary and Martha are, and they get there, and they hear the people weeping. People had gathered, and they're crying. Lazarus had died, and Jesus stops short of the house, and he sends word that he's here, and they go and they tell Mary and Martha, hey, Jesus is here. He's come. And Martha pops up, and she's like, we got to go see him. And she looks over at Mary, and Mary's just still sitting there. She's like, we got to go. And Mary says, no, I'm not going. When we told him that Lazarus was dying, he sat down on us, and I'm going to sit here because I believed that Jesus would. I knew Jesus was this kind of, but he didn't come. And so I'm not going out there. And so Martha runs out to Jesus, and she sees him, and she's emotional, she's angry, and she begins to ask questions. And her moment is she has doubts. She has theological questions, and Jesus listens to her. And he doesn't get mad at her. He doesn't get angry and say, well, don't you know who I am? Don't you know the scriptures? You knew that I could do this. Why would you question me? He just listens to her questions, and he hears her out, and he talks through it with her. And he says to her, your brother will be raised. And in her mind, she hears this, and she understands this as a redemptive piece, that it's not maybe something that would happen in the moment, but at the end, his soul would be raised. And so she runs back in to say, Mary, Jesus is here, and he wants to see you. And she's reluctant. She doubts. She's angry, but still she goes out, and she heads out to Jesus, and she becomes emotional, and she falls down at Jesus' feet for a third time. And she begins to weep, and she's angry. And she says, where were you, Jesus? Why didn't you come when we asked you to come? Why weren't you here to heal our brother? And Jesus could get angry, he could get annoyed, he could respond to her in many different ways. But the only thing he says to her is, take me to his body. And in that moment, Jesus communicates to Mary that I want you to take me to the source of your pain. I want you to take me there where it hurts the most. And it was what Mary needed. She gets up. She begins to take Jesus towards the place where they buried in the tomb. And one of the smallest verses, but most profound, maybe the most profound in all of John's gospel, including John 3:16. This verse kind of shadows that verse. And it's when they get close to the body, and Mary is weeping, and Martha's there, and it says in these two words that Jesus wept, that the tears of the divine are mixed with the tears of humanity, and Jesus begins to grieve. In these three stories, we see Mary fall at Jesus' feet And in the first two stories, we see her attacked by friendly fire. First, her sister, mad that she's not doing it right. She's not doing the work. She's just learning. She's just being taught by Jesus. In the last story, we see one of the disciples, see her wasting this perfume, and how dare she throw away that money to pour perfume out on his feet. And it's this moment of falling at the feet of Jesus to learn and falling at the feet of Jesus to worship. And as a church, not just our church, but a church, big letter C, of all the church, we've done a great job at making space at the feet of Jesus to learn. We have libraries and books and small groups and pulpits and preachers and teachers and pastors and seminaries and theological studies and Bible schools and degrees. We've made a lot of space to learn. And we've also made a lot of space at the feet of Jesus to worship. We created our buildings for that. We have stages and sound systems and lights and fog machines and smoke machines, and we have worship leaders and skinny jeans, and we have guitars and pianos, and we've designed and created a ton of space at the feet to worship. But we've done a horrible job at creating space at the feet of Jesus to grieve, to be angry, to have our doubts and our questions, and to be angry and say, Jesus, where the hell were you? My brother was dying. You said you loved him. I believed you. I thought this of you, but you didn't come. We sent for you, and you didn't come. And Jesus says, take me to his body. Take me to the deepest source of your pain. I want to go there with you, and I want to grieve with you, and I want to give you that space. And so that's something we wanted to do tonight. We wanted Liz to be able to share, and then we wanted to open up the room and give you a chance to have space to grieve. We said this last week. Jody quoted from John Pavelat's book about grief, saying that the way you're grieving now is the correct way to grieve. There are no right or wrong ways to do it. But we have to do it. I had two conversations in the last couple of days with people who were invited here. One who said, tomorrow's the 18th anniversary of my brother's suicide. And another one said, right now the pain's too intense for me to come. I can't do it. And I feel like that is a indictment on us as the ability to be able to talk about it. What we don't want is we don't want another day, a week, a month, a year, 18 years to go by without giving you a chance to talk about it, to give a name to your grief. And it could be anything like Liz opened up with. I mean, it might be a job, it might be a spouse, it might be you may have lost someone or something that meant a lot to you. There's always to grieve, things to grieve, and it's your way to do it. And so we wanted to provide space for that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to play some background music, and we're going to kind of open up this area for you to look at your journal. If you want to sit where you're at, if you want to sit with someone, kind of look through some of these things and maybe answer some of the questions. There's 5 stations to walk through if you want to experience those. And then there can be more than one person at each station. But if you want to just do that, again, if you wanted to sit with someone or sit by yourself, it's your space to grieve. And then in a moment, after that, we're gonna invite you guys to stick around if you want to for a little bit of a group share to give a chance for some people to share a story. But again, participate at your level if you want to stick around or not. That's completely up to you. But we wanted to give that space for you today to do what you needed to do. And even if it's not something you're currently grieving, maybe you can be here to support someone else that is grieving. Let me pray for us. God, in the next few moments, I ask that you soften our hearts and our ears and our hands and our feet to experience you, to realize that there is space enough for our questions and our doubts and our struggles, and space enough for our anger and our fear and our and our tears and our brokenness at your feet, and you welcome it all. And you say, take me there with you, because I want to be in that pain with you. So God, use those in this room to comfort one another, to grieve, to smile, to laugh, to cry, to hug, to be quiet and listen, and give that space. In your name we pray. Amen.